Hi friends, Megan Benton here, Strategic Policy Associate for Texas Values Action. And today I have the honor of interviewing Vanessa Sivadge, a contributor to Texas Values Action, who actually just wrote an op-ed for us on the Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred race. And she's here today to talk about what this race means for Texas from her perspective as someone who was a part of blowing the whistle on these radical sex change operations and hormone therapies that were being used on minors in the state of Texas. Vanessa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I'm honored to be with you.
Now, you wrote this article last week on the Colin Allred versus Ted Cruz race, and in the article you mentioned that you will be voting for Ted Cruz and you encourage Texans to vote for Ted Cruz as well. Why is it that you have such a focus on this race, and why do you think Ted Cruz is the best person for Texas?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This issue is deeply personal for me. I am a registered nurse who was formerly employed at the #1 pediatric hospital in the nation, Texas Children's Hospital. And I came forward a couple of months ago blowing the whistle because I had discovered evidence that the hospital, its health maintenance organizations, and transgender doctors were involved in illegally utilizing taxpayer dollars from Texas Medicaid to cover cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers for children. And I was working for many years in an endocrine clinic that saw gender-confused patients, minors, and saw how children were initiated down this path of medical transition, affirming the false identities that they had adopted for themselves. I saw the harm that this caused for them physically, for them emotionally and mentally. I saw, many of these patients, of course, have numerous other medical issues. They are depressed, they are anxious, they have instances of abuse and suicide in their medical record in many cases. And it's obvious that even after the initiation of these cross-sex hormones, they aren't getting better. This is not life-saving, as these doctors claim that they are. And children are being harmed, and I saw that firsthand. And so this race between Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Colin Allred from Dallas is deeply personal because we have one candidate who's been in the Senate for 12 years, Senator Cruz, who has demonstrated that he will protect and defend Texas children from these illegal procedures, from the sterilization and the mutilation that these hormones and these surgeries lead to for kids. And I align very much with, as a Christian, as a conservative, I align with Senator Cruz and contrast that with Congressman Allred, who, has run this campaign and a spin job trying to rebrand himself as a moderate and as a candidate who is willing to, cross party lines to work with members of the opposite party to pass bipartisan initiatives. This is something that he's boasted about significantly, most recently in the debate where him and Senator Cruz took the stage together. But the facts are the following. We have him voting against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. His record includes voting for the Equality Act. He also co-sponsored the Transgender Bill of Rights, which essentially cements the federal government's role in subsidizing transgender medicine for children. This essentially makes it so that our tax dollars, whether we agree or not, goes to fund and to cover these treatments. This is not really that far off from Senator, now running for president, former Senator Kamala Harris, vice president now, but she also came, many years ago, is on camera saying that she supports federal funds given towards inmates who are detained in jail for their transition into the opposite sex. She believes that it is completely acceptable for federal funds to go towards inmates and detained individuals so that they can transition to the opposite sex in what she calls medically necessary transgender care. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Congressman Allred. He's taken a page out of her playbook.
That's amazing that you were able to research all of that and find that information. It seems like he's trying to really bury that, like you said, and paint himself as more of a moderate in this race. But his record shows, and it seems like this issue is becoming an issue at the forefront of this race. And I'm wondering, as someone who's been involved in this issue long before the election cycle, how are you feeling about this being one of the top issues?
Absolutely. Well, this race has been very contentious on both sides. I encourage your audience, if they haven't already, to watch the debate between Congressman Allred and Senator Cruz, because the differences could not be more clear. We have two candidates who are diametrically opposed to each other in every way that matters. And, Congressman Allred boasts about the fact that he won an award for being the most bipartisan candidate. And yet his record shows that he's voted with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. And, his campaign has tried to smear Senator Cruz as untruthful on a number of occasions. But, during the debate, Senator Cruz did a brilliant job of pointing out the fact that Congressman Allred cannot point to anything in his record to substantiate his claims. He is running away from his record because he can't defend it. The reality is that Congressman Allred knows that he has to appear more moderate to appeal to Senator Cruz's very loyal base of voters, who will not be easily swayed. But Congressman Allred needs to persuade them to join his team, to switch teams, in order for him to win this election. And fortunately, I do not think that the voters of the state of Texas are easily persuaded.
Well, that's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that. I agree with you. I don't think the voters are being persuaded by this because, like we've talked about, his record shows that he is not a moderate. He's very radical. And like you mentioned, he voted right with Nancy Pelosi in Washington. So I think everything you've brought up today is incredible. And it seems like Ted Cruz and Colin Allred, while they're in a tight race, I feel very confident that Senator Cruz is going to prevail, as I'm sure you would too. But it's so important that we get out and we vote this November. And so I'm just wondering, do you have any final thoughts for the audience on the importance of voting or the importance of this race in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time when we could have never anticipated how close this race could be. We have two candidates who, Colin Allred a few months ago was polling very, very close to Senator Cruz, and those margins were narrowing very quickly. And so the lesson here is to not take this for granted. We need to continue to be engaged. We need to continue to vote and vote early. I had the chance to vote today, so I went ahead and did that, and I proudly cast my ballot for President Trump and Senator Ted Cruz, and I encourage everyone to do the same.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Vanessa. If you haven't read her article already, go to txvaluesaction.org and check it out. There is a ton of valuable information in that article to discuss with everyone you know, because it's incredibly important that we understand who's on the ballot and what they really stand for. So if you haven't voted already, get out and vote. You still have the chance, and tell your friends and family to go with you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.